Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And ever since Jonathan Hickman helped launch an all-new, all-different Ultimate Universe, this bold new world has been on a hell of a winning streak. Ultimate Invasion laid the foundation, having the maker completely disrupt an entire Marvel universe. And both Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Black Panther built something intriguing, compelling, and exciting on that foundation. Thus far, the future of this new Ultimate Universe has been bright and hopeful. And now, Ultimate X-Men #1 has arrived. More than any other Ultimate title, this series had a lot of baggage to overcome. Now, I've covered that baggage in other videos, so I won't recount it. I'll just say that when it was announced, this was the Ultimate title I had the most reservations about. Written and drawn by Peach Momoko, it had to build an entirely new legacy for X-Men, and it had to do so in a universe in which every major superhero team was prevented from ever forming. It was also announced from the beginning that this iteration of Ultimate X-Men would be very different, focusing on lesser-known characters like Hisako Ishiki and a whole new character in Maystorm. It's an unusual but risky approach, especially given the baggage that I mentioned earlier. But, reservations aside, I wanted to give Ultimate X-Men #1 a chance. I wanted to give Momoko's vision a chance. I really truly hoped my concerns would ultimately be unfounded. Well, having read this issue, I'll just come out and say it. It sucked. This did not work in any way, shape, or form. I seriously do not know what Momoko was trying to do here. I don't know what Marvel's editors were thinking when they signed off on this crap. But Ultimate X-Men #1 just sucked. There's simply no nice way for me to say it. I won't even bother with a spoiler warning this time. Because if you were thinking about checking this issue out, hoping for a bold new vision of Ultimate X-Men, please save your money. You're better off buying literally any other comic. Because from the beginning, Ultimate X-Men #1 neither reads like an X-Men comic, nor does it offer any novel take on the themes, insights, or concepts that most fans associate with X-Men. As was previously announced, it follows Hisako Ishiki, a seemingly ordinary Japanese girl. She's preparing to graduate from middle school, despite acknowledging that she was barely ever there. Then when she arrives, one of her classmates gives her this button. Within it contains a handwritten message, asking her to meet at a temple located near the school. And for some reason, this causes her great distress. Despite that all too obvious sign, she heeds the message and goes to the temple. There, Hisako meets this shadowy, nameless figure. She doesn't recognize him at first. In fact, there's no hint whatsoever as to who or what he is. He then gives her this locket that resembles her armor powers, and that triggers an intense response. Now, I need to pause here and point out an important detail. While it is true that Hisako is an established X-Men character who's been around since the early 2000s, she is not particularly well known. She hasn't had a prominent role in the X-Men comics for years. And that detail does matter. Because remember, this is a whole new Marvel universe, and the title of this book is Ultimate X-Men. But unless you're as knowledgeable of X-Men lore as someone like me, you probably won't know much about Hisako. You wouldn't even know she was a mutant given the context of this story. And that is a problem, because it essentially ensures that this story makes less sense the more it unfolds. Because once Hisako has this locket in hand, she flashes back to an old friend of hers, Tsubasa. Who is he? We don't know. And it really doesn't matter either, because he's already dead, apparently the victim of generic run-of-the-mill school bullying. None of which is related to him being a mutant or even having powers of any kind as far as we know. His only tie to Hisako is that he's the one who first gave her that locket. Now, Tsubasa's memory is haunting her, and he's talking about taking revenge on those who wronged him. Again, with no further details on who or what he is, or even why Hisako was involved given that she didn't play a part in his death. But Hisako still freaks out and tries to ride her bike home, constantly saying she's sorry along the way, despite knowing full well what happened to Tsubasa wasn't her fault. Believe me, it makes less and less sense the more you think about it. Hisako is so caught up in this distressing, contrived melodrama that she doesn't see a car careening towards her. But before it can hit her, her armor powers manifest and save her. The armored creature even seems to have a mind of its own in protecting her. And again, I need to pause here, because at no point is it clear that this is a result of a mutation. For all we know, it's some magical spell or some elaborate hallucination. Yes, it does have some parallels to how other mutant powers have manifested, but those parallels make no sense whatsoever when the word mutant isn't even mentioned once at any point in this issue, even though other Ultimate books have made clear that mutants do exist in this world. But that doesn't really matter, because there's absolutely no other connection here. There isn't a single reference to any of the events that happened surrounding the Maker, the attack on New York, or the war brewing in Wakanda. Were it not for the title of this comic, you'd have no clue whatsoever that this book carries any weight in this new Ultimate Universe at all. That just makes everything else that happens in this story feel like a complete waste. The rest of the comic plays out in a way that's both predictable and boring. Isako doesn't tell anyone else about what happened. As such, we learn next to nothing about her mother, her family, or her social life. But we do learn that she has the common sense of dumb teenagers in a slasher movie because she ends up going back to the temple where she met this shadowy form in the first place. This leads to more taunting from the figure, followed by a fight between it and her armor form. But there's not much in terms of spectacle or depth. It's just some ambiguous monster fighting Isako, and her armor form protects her every step of the way. This means she basically does nothing whatsoever in this fight and still manages to win, which is both annoyingly contrived and dumb as hell. When the fight ends, the only result is another vision of Tsubasa, followed by a call from her mother letting her know that one of the bullies that bullied him had hung himself. Is it related to this shadowy figure? Is this figure a new version of Shadow King or something? Does it have anything to do whatsoever with mutants, superheroes, or anything related to this new Ultimate Universe? Those are all serious questions, and there is no effort to answer them in any meaningful way at any point in this issue. There's no teasing or foreshadowing, no hints that this somehow connects to other events in other Ultimate comics. I lay this out to make a larger point about Ultimate X-Men #1, and it's best framed with a simple question. If you tried, could you tell a story with as many egregious flaws as this? Just think of every writing tip any kid learns in a standard high school English class. Show, don't tell. Craft compelling characters. Establish a compelling setting. Give characters agency. Have a plot that makes sense. This comic does none of that. Now, I need to take another step back from this review because it's been a long time since I've been this disappointed in any comic, X-Men or otherwise. It would be one thing if this was just some non-canon miniseries like Demon Days, which is another comic Peach Momoko wrote and drew herself. But this isn't that. This is Ultimate X-Men, and yet there are no X-Men, no mutants, and no hint at all that this story has any ties to any other Ultimate comic. So I asked this question seriously. What the hell is the point of this book? It's called Ultimate X-Men, but has no references to X-Men or Ultimate Marvel. And yes, I acknowledge that this series was billed as being different from its predecessor. Peach Momoko said in interviews that she wasn't going to use any familiar X-Men characters. But to use just a single lesser-known character, to not mention mutants at all, or anything else going on in this shared universe, why the hell even call it X-Men? Why the hell did this story have to happen in Ultimate Marvel? On top of that, it's a dumb, disorganized, unsatisfying story on every level. Now, please don't take this as a personal attack on Peach Momoko. She is a very skilled artist who has made some amazing covers. She has also written some great stories. Again, just check out Demon Days. But Ultimate X-Men #1 just sucked. This critical title, which was supposed to build on a new foundation for a new Ultimate Universe, it has no redeeming qualities at all. It has no appeal to anyone aside from die-hard fans of Isako Ishiki. It also reveals what could be a very troubling sign for this new Ultimate Universe, because the margin for error for this imprint is very small. And already, this issue hints that the powers that be had no real vision for X-Men in this universe and didn't care enough to make it meaningfully tie into this larger world. I sincerely hope that's not the case. I sincerely hope that Marvel does something to salvage the X-Men in this new Ultimate Universe. Because, as I've said before in multiple videos, we've been down this road before. Marvel tried to build an Ultimate X-Men series in a world where 80% of the most recognizable X-Men characters were killed off, and it failed spectacularly. Now they're trying to build a new Ultimate X-Men series around a single, C-list character in a world with no X-Men, no mention of mutants, and no other elements that anyone would associate with X-Men. Yes, this is certainly a different take, but if it's so different that you wouldn't even know it involves X-Men if you didn't look at the title, then that's a big problem. If you really wanted something that different, then find another comic, another franchise, or another set of characters. but just don't call it X-Men. Bottom line, Ultimate X-Men #1 is a terrible comic with every conceivable flaw you don't want in a flagship title. The bar was already set very low given how Ultimate X-Men played out in the previous Ultimate Universe. And yet this issue still found a way to lower that bar even more. And ultimately, there's not much more I can say about it, but perhaps that's for the best. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.